There is a moment, usually late at night, when the house is quiet and the television is off, when a question rises up in the mind of almost every person over 50. It sounds something like this: is this it? Is this all there is left for me now? But pause, if that question has ever crossed your mind, I want you to know something before we go any further. You are not broken, you are not finished, you are not too old, too tired, or too far behind to build something new. You are, in fact, standing exactly where every person who has ever reinvented their life once stood, at the edge of what they thought was the end, not realizing it was actually a beginning wearing a disguise. Today, I want to tell you the story of a man named Walter Hensley. Walter was 63 years old when his life, as he knew it, ended. And what happened next taught him and will teach you 5 truths that most people never discover until it's almost too late. Stay with me until the end, because the 5th truth is the one that changes everything. Let's be honest with each other for a moment. Somewhere around 50, 55, 60, something shifts. The career you built either winds down or feels hollow. The children you raise now have their own lives, their own homes, their own worries that don't include you the way they used to. Friends start passing. Your body reminds you, in small aches and long nights, that time is not standing still. And society doesn't help. Society tells you quietly but constantly that this stage of life is for slowing down, for stepping back, for watching from the sidelines while younger people take the field. Pause. But here is something almost no one says out loud. That belief is a lie. Not a lie built on malice, a lie built on habit. A story repeated so many times that people mistake it for truth. The truth is this: history's fullest chapters are often written in what the world calls the back half of a life. Not because people force themselves to feel young again, but because they stopped waiting for permission to grow. Walter didn't know any of this yet. All he knew at 63, sitting in his car in an empty parking lot after being let go from the company he'd given 31 years to, was that he felt invisible. Walter had spent his entire adult life as a supply chain manager for a regional manufacturing company. He was good at his job, quietly excellent, the kind of employee who never made headlines, but who everything depended on. Then a merger came. New leadership arrived with new priorities, and one Tuesday morning, Walter was called into a small office and told that his position was being restructured. He walked to his car that day carrying a cardboard box with a coffee mug, a desk photo of his late wife Carol, and 31 years of unspoken identity. For the first 2 months, Walter did nothing. He woke up, made coffee, sat in his recliner, and watched the news until it repeated itself. His daughter called every Sunday. He told her he was fine. He was not fine. He had lost more than a job. He had lost the answer to the question, who am I now? This is the first truth Walter would eventually learn, though it would take him time to see it. Truth 1. An ending is not the same thing as a verdict. Losing a job, a role, a title, a relationship. None of these events are a final judgment on your worth or your future. They are simply doors closing. And no matter how many doors close, life does not run out of doors. One afternoon, Walter's neighbor, an older man named Roy, who Walter had waved to 100 times but never truly spoken with, knocked on his door holding 2 cups of coffee. Roy didn't ask what happened. He simply said, "You've had that same look on your face for weeks. My wife had it too after she retired. Took her almost a year to let go of who she used to be before she could become who she was going to be next." Walter asked, almost bitterly, "Let go of what, exactly?" Roy answered simply, "The idea that your value was ever tied to that job in the first place." Walter didn't understand it then, not fully. But that sentence planted itself somewhere deep, and over the following weeks, he noticed something. Every time he introduced himself to someone new, he still said, "I used to work in supply chain management." Still, past tense, clinging. One evening, journaling at Carol's old kitchen table, something his daughter had gently suggested, Walter wrote a sentence that surprised him. "I have been mourning a job as if it were a person." That was the moment the letting go began. Truth 2, you cannot build a new identity while your hands are still full of the old one. Asterisk. Grief, even grief for a career, a routine, a former version of yourself, needs to be acknowledged before it can be released. Walter began to allow himself to grieve what was lost, instead of pretending it hadn't mattered. With the grief loosening its grip, Walter noticed something odd. He had time now. Actual time in quantities he hadn't experienced since childhood summers. At first, the time felt like a burden. Then, slowly, it felt like a gift he didn't know how to open. Roy invited him to a Tuesday morning woodworking group at the community center, mostly retired men, building birdhouses and small furniture, trading stories more than sawdust. Walter went reluctantly the first time. He stayed 3 hours. He wasn't good at woodworking. His first birdhouse looked, in his own words, like it survived a storm. But something about the rhythm of it, measuring, cutting, sanding, correcting mistakes, gave him a sense of forward motion he hadn't felt in months. He also began walking every morning. Not for his heart, though his doctor approved, but because the movement seemed to organize his thoughts. He started noticing the color of the sky. He started noticing his own breathing. Truth 3. Balance is not something you find by doing less. It's something you find by doing different things, in the right proportion, on purpose. Asterisk. Walter wasn't chasing his old frantic, career-driven pace. He was building a new rhythm. Slower in some places, richer in others. 6 months in, Walter's daughter mentioned, almost as a joke, that half the men at his woodworking group probably needed help figuring out what to do with their birdhouses and small furniture once they made them. Nobody knew how to sell anything or find buyers. Walter, whose 31-year career had been built entirely on logistics, moving things efficiently from one place to another, sat up a little straighter. Over the next year, without any grand plan, Walter began helping. He set up a simple table at the Saturday farmers market for a few of the woodworkers. He organized inventory. He built a small mailing list. He learned at 64 how to use a basic website builder, sitting with his teenage grandson for patient, occasionally embarrassing tutoring sessions. It wasn't a company, it wasn't fame. It was a small, steady thing, a folding table, a cash box, a handful of regular customers who started asking for Walter by name, but something had changed in Walter that had nothing to do with money. He was needed again, not because of a title on a business card, but because of what he had chosen to offer. Truth 4. Purpose is rarely found by searching for something huge. It's found by offering what you already have to someone who needs it. Walter is, in the fictional world of this story, 71 years old now. The woodworking group has become a modest, well-loved fixture at 3 regional markets. Roy still brings the coffee on Tuesdays. Walter still keeps Carol's photo on the kitchen table, but he no longer mourns the man he used to be. He has become someone new, someone who understands something most people only learn by living long enough to need it. If you asked Walter today what he would tell his 63-year-old self, sitting in that parking lot with a cardboard box, he would say, you are not being pushed out of your life. You are being pushed toward the next one. Let it hurt. Let it teach you. Then get up and build something. Let's bring these truths directly to you now, because Walter's story means nothing if it stays only a story. Truth 1. An ending is not a verdict. Asterisk, whatever door has closed in your life, a career, a marriage, a role you thought would define you forever. It is not a final judgment. It is simply a door. Doors close. Life does not run out of them. Pause. Truth 2. You cannot build a new identity while your hands are full of the old one. If you are still introducing yourself by what you used to be, some part of you is still grieving. That's all right. Grieve fully. Just don't stay there. Truth 3. Balance is not less. It's different in the right proportion. You do not need to fill your days the way you used to. You need to fill them with things that give you rhythm and meaning, even in small doses. A morning walk, a hobby with your hands, a conversation with a neighbor you've never really spoken to. Truth 4. Purpose is found by offering what you already have. You do not need a new skill set to matter. You need to look honestly at what you already carry. Decades of experience, patience, and knowledge, and ask who around you could use it. Truth 5. The one I promised you at the beginning. The version of you that exists after the fall is not a lesser version. It is very often the most complete version of who you were always meant to become, because it is the only version that has been tested, humbled, and rebuilt on purpose, rather than by accident. Pause. You were not made to peak in your 30s and coast for the next 50 years. You were made to keep becoming, chapter after chapter, for as long as you are breathing. If today you feel like Walter did in that parking lot, invisible, uncertain, unsure if anything meaningful is still ahead of you, I want to leave you with this. The fact that you are still here, still watching, still asking the question, is there more for me? That itself is proof that some part of you already knows the answer is yes. You do not need permission from the world to begin again. You only need to stop waiting for the version of your life that already ended and start building the one that hasn't happened yet. If this story reached something in you today, tell me in the comments where you are in your own journey right now. Are you still in the parking lot, or have you already found your Tuesday morning coffee and your folding table? And if you know someone who needs to hear that it is not too late for them either, send this to them today. It might be exactly what they need, Sutzbars, so that next time we sit down together, I can share another story that reminds you, your best chapter may not be behind you. It may be the one you haven't written yet.